I have a secret. Do you want to know what the secret is? I love decaf with a little bit of 2%. And when I go to Starbucks, I say, like 2 inches of 2%. And here's the secret. You ready? Cocoa. The joys in life, and I have some cocoa in the back of my trunk. So not only do I have it in the morning, I've got it in my trunk so I can sneak out and put a little cocoa in, and it's these lovely joys of life that are there. And it reminds me of my grandmother Hazel, who thought that chocolate was one of the 4 food groups. And we'd go to her house, and she'd have the chocolate-covered almonds on the coffee table. And if you didn't eat those, then she would bring out the apple pie. And I love that little crust that has the cinnamon and sugar on it when you have the extra dough. And it would be good with cocoa, too. So talk about elevating our consciousness. We have the sweetness of gratitude coming from our minister emeritus, Reverend Jack Blackman, this morning. And so when I was visiting him, and one of our people had given him transportation to have his medical treatments and see that he's continuing on his path, and he looked so vibrant and radiant. And I said, well, what would you like to share with the community? And I said, would you share it? So take a deep breath.
Hello, beautiful spiritual family. I am so grateful and humbled by all your endless prayers and your love and your care and the prayer shawl, and feel the great love and the prayer work that you send me. And it is all part of facilitating and accelerating my healing process, which is going much better than one could probably expect. So even though there's some tiredness and some other minor symptoms, it is still a very recovering process, and a very special one spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. But it is wonderful to know that I am so supported by such beautiful, loving, caring prayers. And I know that each one of you is blessed, and that the loving source itself wraps its arms around you and embraces you, so you know it loves you like you're the only one on the planet. And when I think of your love and your gift, I feel like it's a part of God that wraps me up in His beautiful love. And I wrap you up in my love and the love of the loving source, knowing you are all blessed, and it is good. And so it is. Have a beautiful day.
Just knowing that there's that sweetness of gratitude, and that there's peace and that there's surrender. And so let's just take a minute and land here and send Him the peacefulness and our knowingness and our kindness, and just having a deep breath right here and allowing that love to just sink in and to be in, through, as, and all around us. And when you're ready, just extend your arms out, and just knowing that that man of faith is an inspiration for us. Whew. So, true colors. We know we're flying with our true colors of the rainbow today. And there's a story in Scripture that's by the centurion when Paul talks about it. And he asks for a healing of a relative. And what he says is, your faith has made you whole. So no matter what is transpiring in our life, we can have faith. We can have faith that there's the encouraging words that others bring to us. There's the encouraging thoughts that we can have, and those empowering feelings that we can have. And sometimes I need to ask, what am I supposed to have faith in? Because sometimes it brings up a lot of questions. What am I supposed to have faith in? And not just faith in, but to have faith of spirit. Am I being asked to believe in something that's maybe not provable? Sometimes we may not have evidence already of what we're thinking about or what our dreams are. Something may be beyond my current experience, right? Is that what faith is sometimes? That there's kind of a gap in there and there's that bridge. And so to have faith of spirit, what is that? What is that for us that we take with us today? And it can sometimes be troubling because we have cultural images of what God is. Welcome. We have just those cultural images. And Dr. Chris Michaels on his webpage says, in order for us to progress as a people and create a more peaceful world, we have to give up the idea of a regional God with personal preferences. Yeah, that has limitations, like the guy in the sky floating on the cloud, or it's something that may be primitive and outdated. It may not be relevant for today's world. And I'm talking about outdated not in terms of Chris Michaels, but I'm talking about outdated in terms of what those concepts may be that we've grown up with. And I could see how it could be hard to have faith and trust in God that was regional rather than this infinite mind, that it's everywhere presence, and that's the present in us too for what quantum physics gives to us too, that parallels our spirituality and our philosophy and our faith and our way of life. And I could see how it would be difficult to have faith in times of a health challenge, in times of a financial growing period, in times of a period of relationship turmoil, in whatever those times are for us. It would be difficult to have faith. And Reverend Jack Blackman is that person. He's a man of faith. He's such a good man, and he is a wonderful example. And I know that we can trust in people to be kind. We can trust that guy on the sky, the cloud, that was vengeful or made judgments or whatever it had, was keeping track. We can trust it perhaps to be that way. Or we can trust ourselves to be loving. We can trust ourselves to be kind and to have faith in that kindness, to have faith in that wholeness. Much like we can trust electricity to be there for us. We have that faith that, yeah, we're going to turn on the light bulb. And this morning we were talking about how many religious scientists does it take to change a light bulb. And we said, really, it's only one, but it has to really want to change. And then there were a whole bunch of other answers. You can get together with the sound booth afterwards. And it reminds me that in our book of the year, A New Design for Living, which is by Dr. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of religious science, the Science of Mind philosophy, which is a guide for spiritual living, he says that that's why our faith is connected to our experience of things. And sometimes we get to go beyond just our present experience and to step up and step out and be lifted up, and sometimes to reframe that I have faith of, even when I have no experience of what I need to have faith in. So I can change my thinking as far as I have no faith in that, but I can say I have no experience in that. And I can be lifted, and when somebody says that I have faith in such and such, for instance, say if there was a leg that was amputated and I would say, oh, just have the faith that it's going to grow back like a starfish or something. I can say that I have no faith. I have no experience of that. It's not the natural tendency. It's not that propensity. But yeah, if I was a starfish, that would be my nature, my divine nature, right? So I may think and I may feel that I can take that step, and sometimes I can't explain why I trust some things. Sometimes I cannot explain why I have faith in things, even when I don't have an experience of it. But it's based in something. It's absolutely based. And here at the Centers for Spiritual Living, we are not asked to accept a teaching on blind faith, like the guy in the sky, white cloud thing. But without inquiring, we're asked to have our lives be its own proving ground, to test drive, to have it be our own testing ground, and to see how we show up in the world. So if I pray daily, if I meditate, if I study, if I give, if I'm generous of heart, if I am in intentional community and I feel those capabilities, that I'm even more capable out of these spiritual practices and can use these principles, which I can count on, I have the resiliency, I have the courage, I know that we're absolutely brave in the very core of our heart, and that we have the core values that we can be led by our heart. And I know that we're capable even more, and sometimes I rely on the quiet mind to get back to those capabilities, and to just still my mind through whatever these spiritual tools are, and to rely upon that. So how do I transform these ideas and have, in essence, a purposefulness in my faith? I test drive my spirituality. There's some strong values in our teaching, and we can show our true colors, and we can be brave. We can certainly know that we're sowing seeds of faith, and that there's that trust, even in something if we haven't had the experience of it. We can trust that we're kind, that we're loving, that we're courageous, that we're joyful, that we can find joy in the cocoa that's in our coffee, and just sprinkle it all over, or put it in our trunk so we know it's already always there. And when we know that there's someone else who believes in us too, we may see even more possibilities opening up for us. And that's part of being in this intentional community, and that we can take that step and actually have things be realized in our life. And that there's that soft place to land right here and have some wonderful music, some wonderful sharing, some beautiful classes, and to believe in our connection and our nature, our divine nature, those natural propensities, and that expansion of our greater good, and that greater yet to be, and to have faith in that as we sow our seeds of faith. And there's many faith traditions that emphasize that spiritual company is vital. And here's what some people are saying in our community. They say, my experience with the presence is connection. It's not separation. My life is not the same as it was 6 months ago. My heart is more peaceful, and my sense of well-being is amplified. This is the best class I've taken in 33 years of New Thought. I love this community. The feeling of love is palpable here. You walk in the door and you take some of that juice with you, much like sprinkling cocoa on the coffee. And I experience harmony and prosperity when I'm generous, and I am thriving in my life. So we're in a conversation that leads us upward. And how many of us may have conversations during the week that may drag us down? And so here is a place that can lead us onward and upward. And it can take us to a place where we practice the love, and we practice the courage, we practice the kindness and the extension of who we truly are. And it's much like movies. We can look at the movie of our own life and how we share that with others. And when my undergrad was in communications and public relations, they said, well, how do people get to movies? How do they know about them? And they said that the most valuable thing is word of mouth. Because when we trust in what people believe and what their experience is, even though I may not have had the experience of the movie, I may not have had that, but I can have faith and trust in what people tell me about the movies. And even if I made up my mind not to go to a movie and I talk with somebody, and they say, I really liked it. I think you ought to go, romantic comedy, whatever it is, you ought to go. And even if I made up my mind not to go, I have trust and faith in that person, and I value their experience, and that I can then share and have that common experience with them. Is that powerful or what? And there's some really good movies out there, and we can be a part of that. And there's so much fun. And so in essence, these people, our people, are catalysts. And I had to look up the word catalyst because it says a person or a thing that precipitates an event or a change. And then listen to this. Much like cocoa, we're going to amplify this. It says a person whose talk, enthusiasm, and energy causes others to be more friendly, enthusiastic, or energetic. What do you think about that? You ready for that? Fasten your seatbelts for that? Yeah. So these studies show that word of mouth, for example, when you see a movie and share that with people, you say, yes, I'll go. Yes, I'll step up. Yes, I'll be in that conversation that lifts us upward. I am a part of that. We just say yes. So we know that that foundation of love and intimacy and affinity is already there, and we rely on that connection to move us forward in faith, to move us forward in trust. And know that as we explore that, if we could explore it all by ourselves, but it really does amplify and magnify that experience as we share that movie together. And I'm not saying that we should really base our faith or our courage on what other people say, but we can take it to heart and say, yes, this has value for me, and it makes a difference. And so we can make sure that at least some of our conversation that we have are with people who have that tendency, that positive nature, the divine nature. And Paul Coelho says we don't have to change friends if we understand that friends change. Because we have that constant of change, and we can honor people's gifts. We can honor that there's the gift that people are bringing in each and every moment, and have that reciprocity and that giving and the receiving. And we are in a community that lifts each other up. We lift each other up, and much like the cocoa, we can sprinkle the joys in life. And I have faith, and I know that there's an endless supply, at least in my trunk, of that cocoa. And it's much like the Buddha says that there's three jewels. There's a commitment and to take refuge, which would be like a respite or something to rejuvenate and renew. And we're going to have we're going to have a retreat coming up for our spiritual family here. And we can take refuge, much like the three jewels in Buddhism. It says that we can awaken in spirit. So there's that awakening nature of our heart, that Buddha nature, that tendency. We have that awakening presence. We can take refuge in this teaching, and we can take it out because it's a practical spirituality, and we can live it and breathe it and share our words of wisdom. And then we can also take refuge in the Sangha, which is a community. And so we're experiencing awakening in this beautiful community. And I've done a lot of insight meditation, which is a lot about allowing and accepting and appreciating, and to bring that to daily conversations that can then lift us up. And it can lift us up from a place of oneness and wholeness. And so this Sangha, it also means to just hang out in community. And we as metaphysicians, we are awakening our magnificence in this world, and knowing that we're creating and co-creating a world that works for everyone, and to have those uplifting conversations. And we're having those conversations because it lifts us. So we get to share, and we get to listen. We get to listen to our heart and make a positive difference. So when I feel stronger, when I feel more creative, when I feel successful, when I feel whole, as I feel well, I can share that perspective, that vantage point, with others. And so I had gone to the ministers' gathering about a year ago, and I'll be going again at the end of September. And there was someone who was describing a difficult situation. And so the focus in that person's life was on the difficulty. It was like, okay, on the difficulty, and then here's this difficulty, and then here's this difficulty. That was the total focus, and it was rough. And I remember, the most thing I remember about that gathering was hanging out with people who were able to lift people up. And so one person said, as that description went on, was, describe what your perfect day would be. Describe what that perfect day is. And what people did was they came up with a larger idea just beyond whatever those difficulties were. And they came back with a much larger idea of life. So to just share this moment and describe what your perfect day would be, if you want to just take and close your eyes for just a minute, describe what that perfect day would be. When does it start? Maybe just close your eyes. It might include someone who's supportive. It might include someone to just hang out with. What would that perfect day be? What are the activities? And then here's the question. What is in the way of having that perfect day? What is in the way of having that perfect day? And what we can do, and if you want to come back, what we can do is say, hey, let's just hang out with someone to just share and not necessarily troubleshoot. You don't, if you think about what gives you joy, like that cocoa, it doesn't mean you have to get together and troubleshoot. But you could just hang out with someone who gives you joy. And oftentimes I'll do this on a walk. Oftentimes I'll do this just over a cup of tea with cocoa. And to just hang out and not troubleshoot. So if we're feeling bogged down by something, we know that maybe hanging out in the joy, hanging out in that moment of creativity, that quiet time, just hanging out in the spiritual nature of who we truly are, we can take refuge in that and be lifted up, to be lifted up in that conversation. To take refuge, take a moment, and have that be the healing process in itself. Ooh, get goosebumps thinking about that. So we can just hang out in our company because it lifts us up. And according to the great philosopher, Cyndi Lauper, she says that I see your true colors shining through, and that's why I love you. So there's no holding back. There's no withhold. She says, don't be afraid. So don't be afraid to let it show. I see your true colors shining like a rainbow in all of those colors. So there's that open-heartedness. There's, even people who are in transition. There's a lot of folks who are in transition. I thought I was on my way to somewhere the other day, and I ended up somewhere else. Anyone ever done that? I called a friend, and she says, well, I'm in the midst of moving some boxes. And I said, wait, let me help you. Let me help you. So we lifted up the back of the SUV, and she had a whole crew of her grandkids, and let me help. Let me place myself and have that uplifting conversation while we're hanging out, hanging in there. Hey, some people may say, hang in there while you're moving through this transition. I know that this new home is going to be magnificent. It even has a better view. And sometimes we have a larger view of life. We may not always, or we may sometimes feel like we are traveling on a tightrope, and there's that fine line where we get to be brave and courageous and resilient and filled with possibility and so much opportunity. And there's this story about faith, being faith-filled and trusting. And there's a tightrope walker who was walking across this canyon on a tightrope, and then he walks like it's very natural, and then he comes back, and then he says, do you believe that I can walk across the tightrope with a wheelbarrow? And the people say, sure, I think you can do it. So he gets his wheelbarrow, and he walks across the tightrope with a wheelbarrow, and he's all balanced, and he makes it to his destination. He comes back, and he walks across the tightrope, and he asks the people, do you think I can do it with someone in my wheelbarrow? And one of his assistants says, all right, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm on board. Can you imagine across Niagara Falls or something? So one of his assistants says, yeah, I'll do it, and balances perfectly. He has the assistant, and then he walks across, and then he walks across the canyon, and he's got that smooth ride. And then he says to the crowd, so who's next in the wheelbarrow? Who's next? And what it does is it says that's the difference between just belief that yes, I will ride in this wheelbarrow. It's the difference between belief and faith. And between the two, there's a little bit of gap. And so knowing that we may say yes or we may say no, we can honor the mystery of all that, and saying, what is my heart called to do? And yes, I can have faith that you can go across Niagara Falls or this canyon in a wheelbarrow and to come back and to be safe and to experience that faith and trust and whatever that love and affection. And it's kind of like, remember Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb? Shirley, anyone? I'm dating myself too. Yeah. Well, we can meet that gap with a healthy perspective. We can be upfront. We can be realistic. We can move through whatever that fear is about going across that balanced area in our life, and to check in with our values. What gives me balance during that time? To check in with our spiritual nature, to check in and say, for instance, you can say, I don't want to be the next passenger in the wheelbarrow. Not me. No, not going to do that. We may decide to say, I don't want to, but I'm going to do it anyway, you know? Or we may say that my heart is really called to do that, and it's my choice. And so I get in with great alacrity and vigor and vitality. Yes, I'll do it. And then sometimes we know that if we're not counting on that regional or primitive concept of God, that there really is the infinite possibility that we may decide to get in it anyways. We may decide to go forward anyways. We know that we can count on something, and even if we were to fall, we can still count on the infinite realm of possibility. It's not because I'm rejected or not because I'm bad, or maybe I was a little bad at balance, but it may be whatever those choices are. It's not that we chose the wrong faith. If I fall, it's because sometimes people fall. Sometimes fall happens, you know? And I'm learning not to add meaning to stuff that's not there. Sometimes that happens, whatever that is. Sometimes things work out really well, or sometimes things don't work out really well, right? And I have a choice in that instant. And so people sometimes say, well, what does it mean when I fall? And what I say is, it means get up. Yeah, exactly. Get up. It means don't just stay there. You see? Yeah. And Dr. Ernest Holmes talks about faith and our attitude of truth, that no matter what, there's the peace and sense of surrender. And he talks about our attitude of truth. He says, faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, it so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. And if we take apart that word, impossible, it means I am possible. Impossible. We can translate that to be that there's that possibility. Dr. Ernest Holmes says, before such a mental attitude can be created, so if I'm on this side of the canyon, and I'm creating that mental attitude over here between belief and faith, before such a mental attitude can be created, there must be nothing left in the subjective state of our thought which contradicts our objective affirmation. We're not subject to something outside of us. But we know we have that infinite realm of possibility that we have faith in, all of that ever-expanding good which is ever available, that shows up as kindness and courage, and developing that faith and that confidence and trust in the love intelligence. It's infinite. And knowing that it's everywhere present, all the time, not just some of the time. Maybe in the middle of the tightrope, but that not just some of the time. And it's not regional. It's not the guy in the sky with preferences. So I learned to draw more and more on the presence and power that resides within me, and I get to choose. I get to choose relationships, or I get to choose when it's time to stay, when it's time to go in a relationship, when it's time to be in business, or when it's time to be expanding, when it's time to be, say, with children, with beautiful grandparents. We have some wonderful community outreach programs that are going on here, and to be involved in those things. And I learned to know that through open-heartedness in all of those spiritual practices, whether it's the quiet mind, whether it's having balance and having those divine reminders throughout the day to keep in balance and to recognize the connection with Spirit, to know that through that open-heartedness there is that connection which is continually recognized. And it's recognized again as I recognize in faith. And as I move forward in that faithfulness, in that realm of trust, trusting that there is an infinite field of possibility that's ever available as this connection, and knowing that I can sprinkle it much like cocoa, and to know that it has that joy that's in it. All of those joys in life I can sprinkle and have that show up as infinite presence, as the abundant life, and knowing that there is the generosity which just flows as this universe. And so let's experience that flow of that perfect day that we imagined. Let's experience that flow and go back to that perfect day as we move into prayer and turn within. And just know that we have all of the creativity and the resourcefulness ever available to us in our wholeness, in our faith, in our wellness. And so I invite us to just have this moment of the pure essence, the divine essence of this beautiful life. And knowing that there is this life spring which happens, and it just springs up and wells forth as this creative process, which just is in a part of something larger. There's a bigger idea, there's a divine ideal, there's a divine pattern which is unfolding with grace, with ease, with surrender, and moving forward in faith. Feeling well supported by the universe, I know that I am connected with this divine nature at all time. And yes, it's natural. It is this essence. It is that which is so real and true, and I rely upon it to be in fullness of balance, of harmony, knowing that it is flourishing, it is thriving. It is a beautiful place to be, hanging out and setting free that beautiful intention of love, of kindness, of joy, of this amazing, abundant life. I know that there is the moments of faith-filled trusting in the universal presence and essence that all needs are met. That there is this place of loving kindness which extends itself, of true aliveness, being fully alive in my heart, in all of its true colors, and showing up as courage, showing up as that which is so brave as the Spirit that resides within me and that I share and give this gift. So I know that there is that receiving and the giving, being openness and receptive to that which is real and beautiful and true in all of its beautiful colors. And I'm grateful for this knowingness and this livingness. And I know that as I release and surrender in peace, it shows up so beautifully and gracefully. And so be it, and so it is.